Hello dear friends, welcome to my YouTube channel that is dedicated to education and learning. And as you know, in each and every video we actually share some beautiful thoughts, some exclusive things of learning, and this time it's regarding English grammar. Yes, you are right. This time it's on English grammar. And what's the topic? Let's share it. This time our topic is voice change. Yes, and here we'd learn about several rules and how to use voice in English language. That's regarding active and passive voice and how it helps us in several ways in formation of sentences and also in using them in proper way. So let's learn how the color of voice changes. As you know, whenever we discuss about voice, the two names appear to us, and the first one is active. And what is active? Suppose this is a car and the driver is driving it. Now if we consider what the driver would say while driving the car, he would inform, I drive the car. So here you'd have to take some other consideration as well as the subject of the sentence. So who is the subject of the sentence? I is the subject of the sentence, and I, the same subject, is also driving the car. So what happens? The action is actually attributed over the doer, and the doer is made the original subject. So the doer in this sentence remains active, and this is called active voice. And the other part, that's the car, is the object of the sentence here. So the original subject, that's the doer, is the subject used in this sentence, and here we consider this I as the subject of the sentence, and he is the doer, and the action is attributed over the original doer. So what would happen? This would be active voice. And then comes passive, and the same scenario, the same car, the same driver, but now he is saying the car is driven by me. So here the subject of the sentence is the car, and the car is not the original doer. Rather, the original doer is the driver, that is I. So what happens here? The original doer remains passive, and as it remains passive, the sentence is called passive voice. So when the doer is not active, we call it passive. And that's the two different types of voice. So if we look at the voice at a glance, would get active and passive voice. Yes, in speech you may use a sentence in many ways. A sentence always finds its voice in the way the subject and the verbs are connected. So to learn voice, we need to look at the verbs and how they have been used in the sentences. So this is the most important factor that you must remember while we are discussing about active and passive voice. Here the verb structure is very much important. So whenever you get a sentence, look at its verb first, and its verb would tell you about the voice actually imbibed in these sentences. So types of voice, finally we get two different types: active voice and passive voice. So what is active voice? When the verb is attributed to the subject, the sentence is called in active voice. He plays football. Here, plays. This is active. And again, passive voice, when the verb is attributed to the object or something else, the sentence is called in passive voice. Football is played by him. So here is played. This is a passive construction. So here you must remember that the two verbs, plays and is played. I've told you, no, the verbs are very much important. You have to look at the verbs first, and the verb would tell you about the color of the voice in this sentence. So, plays, this is active, and is played, this is passive. Now, if you look at these two sentences, what you'd get? Note it down. In the first sentence, the doer of the action, that is the subject, remain active. That is, the verb is called in active voice. And what happens in the second sentence? The subject is acted upon, and it is the receiver of the action. That is, the subject is not active. Thus, the verb is called passive voice. So, here we would learn about some basic rules for changing the voice of the sentence. As you know, we can change active voice into passive and passive into active. So what would it do for the change of voice? The first point, the subject should be transformed into the object and the object should be transformed into subject. In passive voice, by should be added before the object. This is very much important. And next, the verb of the sentence should be transformed in the following way. And we have already told you that the verb pattern which would tell you which voice the sentence is. So let's learn the verb patterns. This is for the present tense. And in present, you get forms of simple present, present continuous, present perfect. And if you look at them properly, what do you get? Obviously, you get that here the basic form with which the verb pattern is formed, that is in active, what we get must be added with be plus past participle form of the verb, and you'd get the passive form, that is takes or take. So am taken or is taken or are taken. So according to the subject, would choose am, is or are, that is the be verb, and then we have changed the main verb into its past participle form, and we'd get the passive voice. So whenever you look at the verb structure, it will tell you which voice the sentence is in, whether the verb is with active structure or with passive structure. What happens most of the time, students follow the word by. If there's by, they consider it as passive, and if there's no by, they consider it inactive. So sometimes it happens that we get many passive sentences where you won't see any by, and they fail to recognize it, and they consider it as active voice. And that's no method, actually that's no rules, it's out of rules. The rules is look at the verb, look at the verb pattern, and you'd know which voice this sentence is. And this is the structure for the past forms. Actually, if you learn the present form well, you'd get the past forms. These are very simple, just the past forms for those present forms. So the present forms are replaced with past forms only. And when we get to the future, there you'd get only simple future, and there is also structure for modals, and this is also very much important. In the last slide of this video, we discuss about modals. Just remember, for modals as well, we use the same form, be plus past participle form of the verb, that is should is transformed into should be plus verb in past participle form. So if you take the example, say take, should take would be conformed into should be taken. So these are the rules for the change of the verbs. But here we discuss how the rules could be used. It's very vital. We have to use the rules now. So how do we use the rules? That's very much important. Suppose here I have taken one sentence. I like it. So look at the verb first. Like. And what would you get? With like, we'd get that this is active. I is the subject and it is the object. So now we would change the voice. So subject I would be transformed into me, object, and it, object, would be transformed into it as subject, and like would be transformed into be plus verb, past participle form of the verb, that is liked, and by is added. So what happens finally? Finally we get I like it would be transformed into it is liked by me. So the subject is transformed into object, the object is transformed into subject, verb is changed according to the rules of the tense, and by is added before the object, and we get our desired passive sentence, and just the opposite form would be followed to get changed passive sentences into active sentences. And here you must remember one very particular fact, that you'd get several sets of rules. Why? Because for each and every types of sentences you'd get some set of rules. These rules, which we have already discussed, these are about assertive sentences. So these are the rules for forming assertive sentences into active or passive voice. And here we would learn another important factor about voice change, that is sentences with double objects. Sometimes we find some sentences with double objects. So what is the double object? Here you would find two different objects, direct object and indirect object. And here, while you are changing the voice of the sentences with double objects, you may select any of these two objects to form the subject. There's nothing more to discuss about. Just remember, you can take any of the direct objects or indirect object into subject. So we'd see it in examples. Here, just follow the examples. Don't look at the first rules. We'll discuss it later on. He teaches you English. So here he, that's the subject, teaches verb, you indirect object, and English direct object. So what's the direct and what's the indirect object? You know it. If you ask the verb with what, the answer you'd get, that's direct object, and with whom, the answer you'd get is indirect object. So here we have taken you, the indirect object, as subject. You are taught English by him. So what happened? We have left English, the direct object, just after the verb as it was, and this is called a retained object because this object is retained. And we may take English. English is taught you by him, and there you would become the retained object. So now we discuss about the passive of the verbs with modals. Follow the passive form first. Modal plus be plus past participle of the main verb. We have discussed it in our previous slides, and probably you have remembered where we were discussing about the verb structures. Look at the examples well. He can do the work can be done by him. So we have followed modal plus be plus past participle form of the main verb. This structure is followed, and finally we get our passive form of the verbs with modals. So dear viewers, I think while you are reading the examples, listen to my message. We have discussed about a part of the voice change so far. Still, the second and the third and the fourth parts are waiting. There are several other rules regarding voice change, and we'll discuss them in our next videos. So stay with us, listen to us, and like and subscribe our channel, and obviously don't forget to press the bell icon, for we are coming with the second part very shortly. So far, Stay tuned with us. Help us in inspire us in creating more such videos. Thank you very much for watching. Hello.